play a game.
The next thing I think would be really interesting to talk about is the lack of nuclear winter in the game, because clearly something's wrong with the world. Plant life hasn't returned, something's awful, but there wasn't this decades-long nuclear winter where fallout shot up into the air causes basically a blackout, and temperatures drop, nothing can grow, and even those that survived outside the vault, they would perish through many other number of ways. Again, this can't happen because then there would be no world created. But this was a weird, somewhat what's considered a plot hole for the games. And this is where I talked about earlier the Fallout Bible, where they would come up with plot holes and then they would try to let the fans solve them. So in 2002, Chris Avalon, who was a game designer for Fallout 2, he put together a bunch of background information from the first two games and wrote the Fallout Bible. And in issue 6 of the Bible, which you can all find online, he admits that the lack of nuclear winter was a, quote, oversight in the Fallout backstory. But then in issue 8, he poses the question and lets fans come up with a solution, and then he'll vote on the one that he likes the best. And their basic argument was, because it is controversial, the idea of nuclear fallout and nuclear winter, would it actually happen? Carl Sagan was a big pro-nuclear winter is a thing advocate, and he was very strong in pushing that out. Other scientists after the fact, largely a lot of them government scientists that would say nuclear winter is not a thing because if nuclear winter was a thing, you would be much less likely to use nuclear weapons in deterrence because it would destroy the entire world or fall along those lines. So that was a controversial subject. Some research done more recently has shown that nuclear winter can happen even in a limited war between India and Pakistan.
Oh, Lord.
A lot of it overlaps with climate science as well. Mm-hmm. Whether or not, like, changing the climate and weather in ozone layers versus can you create a greenhouse effect with just fallout dust that gets collected up there. You always compare it to the asteroid or the comet that destroyed the dinosaurs. All those things are all wrapped up together. So I think a lot of the fans that liked Fallout, that wanted to come up with a solution to this idea, essentially pointed to, well, look, this is disputed science. It's just like climate science. There are some people who say climate change is real, and then there's these scientists that say that they don't. So it's an open question.
I have a solution. I think, possibly. Well, no, just that in the retro future 50s and 60s, was nuclear winter something that people were thinking about? I thought that it was a little bit later that people started worrying this would happen, at least in the blocking out the sun sort of all plant life dies sort of way. I mean, I know that like on the beach is clearly scientifically nonsensical because it's basically everyone's in Australia waiting for somehow the radiation to slowly like sneak over and finally kill them. But I thought that nuclear winter kind of became a thing to worry about in almost the 70s and 80s, but I don't know if I'm wrong about that. I was also going to ask you if people still thought that that was probable or not, because I'm not up on my actual science, just my pretend science.
I tend to fall in the line that nuclear winter is a definite reality if a certain number of bombs are used all at once. I think that's a possibility that would happen, but depends on who you talk to. It's one of those things that a lot of people in the Global Zero movement, an advocacy group that's very big, and a lot of the work on college campuses about trying to advocate for nuclear disarmament, talk about nuclear winter as a definite reality. It's a fact of life. Then you have a lot of people who say, well, nuclear weapons are not great, but until we can get rid of them and ensure that no one has them, and then also have these radical changes in how we view war and conflict and war as a means to resolving conflict, then we need to have them. And nuclear winter, it would be bad, but it wouldn't be that bad. It would be, you know what I mean? Like Fallout's a problem, but the other thing too is people say, well, cities would probably be attacked with airburst attacks. And when you have an airburst, it's a high enough off the ground that fallout is minimalized. So this assumes that there'd be all ground burst attacks, which is not likely to take place. Although there'd be a lot of ground burst attacks in the middle of the United States, because that's where all of our missile silos are.
Yeah.
Those need to be ground burst to have enough force to destroy them. But a lot of cities might not be destroyed with ground burst attacks. So then that's how people dispute. They say,
it's a bit lackadaisical still. It probably, why worry about it? I don't know.
It's one of those interesting comparisons to climate science. Now,
yeah,
I'm going to get probably added on Twitter about that, but it is certainly that idea is there, and it's behind the scenes of the Fallout games. That's how people justify some of that.
Strange game. The only winning move. today.